Greetings, greetings, family. We are live. Sister Shanice in the house. And as you can see, we have our brother Kwame Gunza with me. We also have Sister Sheila and Leader Bandaka getting ready backstage. We are looking forward to another wonderful, wonderful discussion today. Brother Kwame, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Sister Shanice. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you, my brother. I'm doing good too.
Wonderful, wonderful,
I had a
wonderful.
show earlier today, my Galaxy Afiwi radio show, and wow, 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 what an interesting discussion we had.
Incredible, incredible.
It really, really
Greetings
was
all the way from East Africa. Right now
Mhm.
in East Africa, I was able to
Wonderful.
travel a few weeks ago from the west side of our continent in West Africa, and
Mm,
I'm currently in East Africa. So I think this is what we should be praying for and fighting for, so that we are able to move all over our continent, freely without any interruptions. So we
absolutely.
can remove all those impediments, and we will continue fighting in that direction. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame. And how is East Africa? How is it looking since the last time you visited?
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. There's a lot of food. The land is green. It's beautiful. As always, East Africa has a lot of food. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So
We
I'm
need
really
to
glad to
hear
be back.
these stories, my brother, because if we listen to the mainstream media,
Yes.
we begin to have all sorts of imaginations about what
Mm,
East Africa is
mm,
like. So when
mm.
you say to us it's beautiful, that there's lots of food,
It
and
is.
the land
It's
is
you.
looking luscious, it totally contradicts the images that we are given here in the West.
Yes,
Of
yes. This is the beauty of us telling our story. East Africa, is a champion. It has very good weather. First of all, we grow a lot of food. We don't import things like sugar. We don't import things like coffee. We don't import things like tea. When you come, we don't import milk. We have a
Mhm,
lot of cows which give
mhm.
us milk, and we have a lot of food. We have a lot of fresh fruit, food, and that
Mhm.
is the difference between East Africa and West Africa. West Africa, there's a lot of industry, but when it comes to agriculture, I think West Africa is a little bit behind, because I've been staying in Ghana for the last 10 years, and I see a lot of importing out there. When it comes to agricultural products, things like rice, which is very, so much plentiful in East Africa. Things like
Mhm,
coffee, things like
mhm,
tea, things like fresh milk. All these are imported from places which are not in Africa. They are imported from Europe, Switzerland, Germany,
mhm,
Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan. This is where they get
mhm.
their rice. Yeah. So I believe that it is up to us as the African people to find a way how we can move these products from East Africa and send them to West Africa, and then move the other products which are in West Africa, like clothes, chocolate, cocoa, um,
Mhm.
vehicles, Kantanka vehicles, Sony vehicles in Nigeria, bring those vehicles to East Africa. So we need to find a way of doing that, so that, we can start trading among ourselves, and then we can start owning the continent in its entirety. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Really important works you're doing there on the ground, my brother Kwame. This is what, industries and big corporations pay a lot of money for people to go out and do. You're assessing the market. You're seeing
Mm,
what goods are
mm.
available in one part of the country, the continent, that could actually be imported, on the continent to another part of the continent, which should be much cheaper, more economical, and also, it's us doing for self, feeding our own people. You are
Excellent.
basically in a position where you could be a broker. Yeah, you got the rice companies on the ground in West Africa. Okay, it's just about brokering the deals now and getting all of the outlets in East Africa. And you could be in a position where you're supplying the markets. This is
Yes.
how we've got to do it. Absolutely. Let me welcome
Definitely.
Sister Sheila in the house. Rise up, Sister Sheila. How you doing?
I give thanks. I give thanks for this wonderful, wonderful day. It has been a great, strong, and I thank everyone for being here. Brother Lee Dambadaka, I am grateful to see you here. I always learn from you. And my brother Kwame, always learn from you as well. And Sister Shanice, I am happy to be here. And I start by saying there is an awakening going on. Today, when I was at the plantation, one of my brothers at the plantation, who normally is a white supremacist, someone that was always defending the system, someone that defends the establishment, today came to me and told me he went to it's Black History Month. So he said he went to a function. He was dragged by his wife to this function that he did not want to go to. And he said when he was there, he met a certain lady who is a genealogist. And she focuses on the African genes and traces them all the way back. And the woman gave a speech on how the African is the original human of this planet, and how the African has been here from time immemorial. And there was so much evidence. This man is also a very scientific-based man, that if you don't give him scientific evidence, sometimes from peer-reviewed researches done by the Caucasian, he does not believe that anything you say is the truth. It must come from the white man for it to be true. So in this place, he went to this meeting, and the lady was quoting, including Caucasians and researchers, and giving evidence that they themselves have even said that the original person is the black man. And that put him on this search, and it's like something opened in him. And he has found out a lot of information about us. And now he's finally came to me today and said, you know what? All these things you've been saying is true. And we talked about the awakening that's happening. And I must say that our people, we must keep having these conversations. We must keep speaking. We must keep coming to shows like this. We must keep talking to each other in social media, face to face, everywhere. These conversations are awakening our people. They are not in vain. So as we gather here today to talk once more, we are awakening our people. I give thanks.
We give thanks to you too, Sister Sheila, and thanks for that inspiring opening. The works is not in vain. And for someone who's been doing the works for many, many years, Leader Bandaka, let's just welcome you. Greetings, Leader. How you doing?
Tendamwari.
Tendamwari.
Oh, I'm giving thanks and praises, my beloved sister. I am indeed richly blessed, as I can see my beloved brother and sisters are also indeed. And may I say, you know, as always, I bring greetings in the most precious, powerful, and bountiful name of our motherland, Al-Kebulan, Mama Africa, in the sacred spirits of our most gracious ancestors, and in a prayer for oneness, hope, and prosperity for all African people upon the face of Mother Earth. Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. We say again, Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. We give praises unto the great ancestors for blessing us with life, with the meaning and purpose of life, with health and strength and daily food, with the strength of conviction that we have come with this evening to inspire and uplift our people with knowledge and information. And Sister Shanice, if I may bow to the divine in you that gives you the strength and power to do this mighty work that you have been doing, and doing it so well and getting better and better every time. You know, you are truly blessed. Sister Sheila, and to our brother Kwame Gonza, your work also is a manifestation of the divine in you. Your work is also a manifestation of Mzima Mokoro, the great ancestors, moving in your hearts and your souls and your minds and directing your thoughts and your words and your deeds. And we are all blessed by everything that you do and say on a daily basis for the empowerment and liberation of our people. Can I just also raise up and reinforce the fact that in the UK, it's Black History Month. And so we honor all those who came before us, who contributed to evolving African History Month to what it is today. And I just want to hail Carter G. Woodson, the man who pronounced on Negro History Week, which evolved in the 1960s, in the revolutionary 1960s, into Black History Month, and which was brought here in the UK, established here in the UK, under the leadership and the vision of a Ghanaian brother by the name of Achiaba Adaye Sebo. We hail them all and give thanks and praises. Sister Shanice, may I just ask that at some point when it's appropriate, that we do make mention of Valerie's Law and urge our brothers and sisters to sign that extremely important petition. I know you have signed it and I know you support it. So I will leave it there for the moment. It's a joy to be an African and a blessing to be on this program this evening. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, always an honor and a privilege, my brother. Let me go back to you and ask you to just please inform our audience about Valerie's Law. Then I will greet the audience formally, and then we will start with the opening presentation. So Valerie's Law, yeah, please do let those who don't know what it's about, please, leader.
Well, Tendai Mwari, it's a movement that is being spearheaded by an African sisters organization called Sister Space. And they are inspired by a duty to raise up the name of a sister who was brutally beaten to death, and in fact hacked to death, as horrific as that is and as it sounds, by a brother, by an African man, obviously, who has completely lost his way, completely lost his sense of being who he is, and who also, by the same means, took the life of his own child, a 2-year-old child. And there's a campaign to get Parliament to pass laws that would make specific to the case of our sister, to make the law even more effective in responding to domestic abuse and domestic violence. And it is, I'm sure everyone listening in would agree that this is something that we must obliterate from our communities, from our families, from our nations. This horrific, evil practice and action must be stopped. So we've got work to do in our community. That's another subject for another time. We have work to do amongst ourselves. But insofar as this important organization, Sister Space, is leading this campaign and asking us to sign the petition, they need 100,000 petitions to force Parliament, signatures on the petition to force Parliament to debate the matter in Parliament. So that's what it is about. I don't know whether you have the
yes, I do have
with you. Okay, so I could leave it there, my sister, if I may, and if you could give the details. But we're urging brothers and sisters to sign the petition. If you can do it whilst you're watching this show, because it will only take a few seconds. Sign the petition, and after the program, or even during the program, text others with the information and urge them to sign it now. Don't waste any time. Do it right now. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. Thank you so much, Leader Bandaka. And for those of you in the audience and viewers who are watching outside the UK and are wondering, why do we need Valerie Law? I mean, in addition to what Leader Bandaka is saying, you know, the reason why this petition is so important is because, you know, family and friends of the victim in this incident, whose name was Valerie, their lives could have been spared had the authorities and the institutions responded to her cries, heard her appeals for help, you know, responded appropriately when she was telling them that she felt her life was being threatened. Had they, you know, had the humanity to hear our sisters cry both herself and her child may well have been alive today. But because of institutionalized racism and discrimination in this country, this petition is being used to actually call for those agencies that are supposed to be looking after our interests to actually do so, to give their staff members, non-Africans, training, so that when we talk, you know, they don't think, oh, we deserve what we get, but they actually are reminded that they have a duty and an obligation towards providing services for us as well. And this is a situation that we're faced with, family, you know, outside of Africa in the diaspora, you know, and this is why we're saying it's so important that Africa maintains control and responsibility over all of its institutions, its organizations, its resources and everything. Because if those who don't look like us are in control of it, it doesn't guarantee that we're going to be getting the service at all. And that's where we're at. Now, to support the petition, please go online to petition.parliament.uk. That's petitions.parliament.uk/petitions, or just search for Valerie's Law and it will come up. In fact, I'm going to post it in the chat as well. Okay, family? And you can pick up the petition from in the chat. Please do sign. We're on a drive to try and get it up to 100,000. We're on 61,000. Let's see exactly where we are. We're on 61,713. Let's try and get that up, you know, another 1,000 or so. And please, family, do also share the link. The more of us that signs it, the better. Okay, so we'll revisit that during today's discussion at some
So
point.
Shanice, may I just inform our beloved viewers that last night we were at 59,000 and change. So clearly we've added 2,000 to nearly 3,000 signatures since then.
That's right.
On Africa Speaks with Al Kebel, that it was 59,000 plus. So brothers and sisters have been responsive.
Yes.
And I know on Galaxy Radio today, it was being announced and so on. So please just join this force, brothers and sisters, and get these signatures in. That's so important. Thank you so much.
Let's do this. Yes, let's do this. Absolutely. Yes. So welcome, everyone in the audience. We're going to go over to the audience now. We're going to find out who we've got in the house and where our viewers are watching us from. So please drop us a message in the chat. Let us know where in the world you are viewing us from. So I want to rise up Brother Lance, who was the first in the house today. Sister Afrijamo, I know she's watching us from Ghana. Yeah, she's saying, greetings, Sister Shanice, panel members, my real African brothers and sisters worldwide in the chat. Yes, she watch from Ghana. And we want to rise up YR Productions as well. We've got Brother Reggie in the house. Says Reggie Hayes is here, Queen. Rise up yourself. Oh, Brother Reggie had a wonderful launch of his premiere movie on Saturday. Very well done to you, Brother Reggie. And feel free to post in the chat the link to your movie so that those who missed the premiere can actually watch it via the link at their leisure. Well done, onwards and upwards to you, our young movie maker and TV producer in the house. Rising up, Lady V. Is that Lady V from the Gambia or Lady V from the UK? Rise up, Lady V. Also, we got Brother Kwame Ossie in the house. Rise up, Brother Kwame. He's saying, Brother Kwame Kenyatta is screwing Kenya. The tea grown in Kenya technically is owned by a British family. You see how you see what your Iwagwan family? We have to maintain control of all of these industries. So as young Brother Kwame was saying, you know, he's seeing the potential for these new markets. These are new markets that we could create for ourselves, you know, between ourselves. And if we don't capitalize on these new markets, others most definitely will do. So let's get in there and get control. Orbia man in other house, rise up, Orbia man. He must say, hello, Sister Sheila. Oh, he not big you up, Sister Sheila, and he not big me up too first. Oh, all on there, him big me up as well. So Orbia man, nice one. And, to everyone else in the house, we thank you so, so much. Brother Kwame saying that, Brother Kwame, he's addressing it to you on the panel. Did you hear of the Planting for Foods initiative in Ghana? The Planting for Food initiative in Ghana. Okay, fantastic. When Brother Kwame comes back, he can mention that to him. So a bit of a discussion there already starting in the house. Rise up, Brother Kwame. We'll come back to some more of your comments. I can see Sister Zamora's in the house. Rise up, Sister Zamora. Welcome, welcome. Kwame's saying Rwanda is a failed African state. Kagame is evil, silencing the opposition and making it a police state. Really, family, we share your views in the chat. We want to hear from you. TMKR is saying, Sister Shanice, you are a true African beauty. Thank you so much. What a beautiful, beautiful compliment. More love back at you, TMKR. Casey in the house. Hello, Sister Shanice. Hello, panelists. I am happy to be here and to get to listen to you all and learn as always, eh? Not to forget, she says, listen to Sheila's stories. Of course, you all look forward to Sister Sheila's stories. And she says, I give thanks. Watching from Kenya. We got Kenya in the house. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, right. Let's welcome Cosmic Diaspora as well. We are living in complex time, that's for sure. Welcome, Cherry B. Welcome, Maureen. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you in the house from Kenya. Kimani, welcome. Warbiaman, yes, been watching so what going on Al Jazeera's or just music there. See, I say I watch Al Jazeera's and last it. Okay, welcome everybody. Lady V from the Gambia. Rise up yourself, Lady V. And we've got Bimbola saying hi. Where are you watching us from, Bimbola? All right, Connect Africa. Rise up yourself. Rising up all of the royals in the house. We'll be going back to the chat. Keep posting your messages. Let us know where in the world you're viewing us from. We are going to be coming back to you in the chat. But first of all, for our first presentation today, we're going to be going over to our brother Leader Bandaka, who has a presentation for us. So take yourself off mute, brother Leader, and please get ready. Just to let you know, if this is the first time that you're meeting our dear beloved brother Leader Bandaka, you need to know that he is a spiritual leader of the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement, and he's also a nationalist, Pan-Africanist, and part of the liberation movement. In addition to being a community activist and organizer for nearly 40 years, he's a proud father of 4 and grandfather of 10, no less. And all of Brother Mandaka's work is African-centered, specializing in religion and spirituality, education and schooling. He's also an African Black history and culturalist and an African families dynamics rites of passage as well. So these are the areas that he specializes in. He's part of his as part of his spiritual work, he reviews and conducts African modes of worship and life cycle blessings. So he can preside over naming ceremonies, passing over ceremonies, marriages, initiatives, etc. So we want to welcome our brother Leader Bandaka. So much more I can say about our dear brother, and we'll do as we go through the show. So brother Leader Bandaka, we know it's going to be educational. We know it's going to be insightful. We are excited. Over to you, my brother. Please take yourself off mute. One love.
Okay. Tendai mwari.
Tendai mwari.
Regai mazwi andino taura nepungwaza mumuyo mangu. Zinzikwe nemi mwari. May the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Jah of our creation. Tendai mwari.
Tendai mwari.
Yes, giving thanks and praises unto Mwari Nyakusika, God, the creator of the universe, through Muzimu Mukuru, our great ancestors. Today, we are asking the question, is Rwanda really a miracle? I'm mindful that my brother and sister are here and are here to contribute to the discussion. And so I'm going to try and be as tight as I can so that we can allow them a reasonable and fair amount of time.
Thank you. And brother leader, and if you feel, you know, that you're squeezed, we can always come back to you to continue.
Yeah.
Yes. So don't
fine.
feel you need to jam it all in.
Yes,
Yeah.
fine. That's fine with me. So the question is Rwanda really a miracle? There are those among us who indeed believe that Rwanda represents a miracle because Rwanda went through what was reported as a genocide in 1994, where reportedly 500,000 to 1 million people, mainly not so-called, but mainly Tutsis, were massacred. This was reported as a genocide. And then there was an invasion or an intervention from an organization, movement called the Rwanda Patriotic Front, led first by one Fred Rijima, and then after he was assassinated, the leadership was taken up by Paul Kagame, who has remained the leader of the Rwanda Patriotic Front, which is presently the political party that is in power in Rwanda. Now,
Brother leader, sorry, this is my last interjection.
Don't worry, please.
Are you intending to move the slides along? Because
yes,
we're still just seeing the first slide.
Yeah, can we get it big?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you put it on slideshow, it'll go big.
Yeah, I'll put it on slideshow. Okay.
Yeah, put it on slideshow and do move it along if that's what you're intending to do. Thank you. Please continue whilst you prepare the slideshow. Back to you, brother leader.
Okay, all right. Tendai Mwari. The image is not seeming to come up, so I'm not going to worry myself too much.
Okay, well,
we're working on it.
If you take it off and share screen, you continue talking while you do the share screen again. Yeah.
Okay, right. So as I was saying, that there are those among us who believe that Paul Kagame is doing a wonderful job in Rwanda, that he has turned Rwanda around. For one, it is said that he stopped the genocide. Two, the economy is doing well. The gross domestic product is reasonably high. They tell us the educational system is functioning very well. The healthcare system is functioning very well. The streets are clean. Here's the first image, brothers and sisters. So I just wanted to give brothers and sisters a sense of what we're talking about when we refer to Rwanda. Rwanda is a country in East Central Africa. It has an area of just over 10,000 square miles, a population of 12 plus million people. The president is Paul Kagame, who has been the president since the year 2000. The people of Rwanda, and I want to stress here that we often hear about the Tutsi and the Hutu of Rwanda as tribes and less about the Twa. As we can see here, the reported demographics is 85% Hutu, 14% Tutsi, 1% Twa. I want to stress here that the people of Rwanda are an homogeneous people who call themselves the Ban-Rwanda people. That Hutu, Tutsi, these terminologies are not tribes or ethnic groups. They are terms of social reference, or one might say social distinction, but not terms of tribes. They're not separate tribes. They have one history, one ancestry. They have one language. We can see here the language of the Ban-Rwanda people is Kin-Rwanda. So one ancestry, one language, and one history. Now, it is important for us to understand that Rwanda was colonized after the Berlin Conference in 1884-85, even though Rwanda was apportioned to Germany first, and this happened actually at a Brussels conference in 1890, and that the Germans were the brutal colonizers of the Rwanda people, of the Ban-Rwanda people. At that time, the country was called Rwanda Urundi. And the Germans played off Tutsi against Hutu. The Germans are the ones that implemented this rigid and crass system of tribalism and implemented a system that... Sister, can you see the screen?
No, we're not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm speaking as though...
Okay. No, we're listening to you. Just share screen as we did when we were preparing it beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah, just go to share screen and then share screen. But you can continue talking meanwhile, my brother.
Okay. So it's important for us to understand that that Rwanda was colonized by the Germans between 1890 and 1916, and that this system of colonization was a brutal, in effect, a system of enslavement, a system of slavery. Colonization is national enslavement. It's a nation enslaving another nation, rather than individuals enslaving individuals. It's a nation enslaving another nation. And as Europeans always do, they implemented the system of divide and rule, divide and conquer, where they elevated the Tutsi over the Hutu. Now, that is not to say that there were not issues between social issues between Tutsi and Hutu prior to this, but any genuine study of the history of Rwanda will inform us that these two social groups got on relatively well. There was relative peace between these two groups. The Germans, after World War I, Rwanda was taken from Germany and given to Belgium. Belgium then became the colonial power that had authority over Rwanda. And Belgium continued and even built on the system of divide and conquer that was implemented by the Germans. They started to implement ID cards. They even got under the system of eugenics. They even got eugenicists to come into Rwanda and start measuring noses and skulls of Ban-Rwanda people, and defining them and separating them as Tutsis and Hutus, and saying that the Hutus were better than the Tutsis were better than the Hutus, and because they had European blood in them. Okay, that was partly because they were also copulating with elements within the Tutsi. And so they were saying that the Tutsis were lighter in complexion, they looked more like Europeans, etc., etc. So to cut a long story short, beloved brothers and sisters, we need to understand the background of those years of colonial domination, those years of colonial divide and rule, those years of colonial divide and conquer. And as a result of that, there were massacres which took place at different stages of the history of the relationship between the Hutu and the Tutsis. Now, I want to just jump forward a bit. Now, I will go back, sister, my beloved sister. I want to jump forward and say that the Rwanda we see today, with Paul Kagame as president of Rwanda, is not a Rwanda that is controlled by Paul Kagame, who is being given all of this credit for being this wonderful leader. It is a Rwanda that is controlled by Tony Blair through his Institute for Global Change. This Institute for Global Change has Tony Blair as the unofficial advisor, that's his official role, unofficial advisor for the president and the government of Rwanda. But this unpaid, not unofficial, sorry, unpaid advisor. But this unpaid advisor has his workers in various departments of the Rwandan government. This Institute of Global Change is in about 15 countries on the African continent. In effect, brothers and sisters, it is a colonial power, a neo-colonial power. It's a new system of colonialism. Tony Blair assuming the role very similar to a governor who presides over and directs the politics and the national operation of the nation. And then you have colonial officers who are running the various departments. Tony Blair's Institute for Global Change has over 200 employees working in a number of government institutions across the African continent. These are paid workers, paid employees who live in the various countries. There are about 10 of them who are in Rwanda. They live in Rwanda. Their families live in Rwanda. They get a wage for what they are doing. And I want to just give you a sense of what Tony Blair's, because really, to understand Rwanda, you have to understand Tony Blair, Tony Blair and the Institute for Global Change and its purpose, its mission. And his mission, as is expressed on their website, is, as it says, our mission is to equip leaders and governments for a global future. By shaping the debate and offering expert advice, we aim to help political leaders build open, inclusive, and prosperous societies in an increasing interconnected world. Today, it's the word interconnected is used. I can tell you that previously the word globalized was used. It's a new world order, globalization agenda that Tony Blair is advancing on the African continent. And here, again, I read, he says, by shaping the debate and offering expert advice, we aim to help political leaders to build open societies. They want African societies to be open, not closed the way China closed its borders in order to protect itself, in order to protect its boundaries, in order to protect the revolution that was taking place in China. They want open societies, inclusive. These are, brothers and sisters, these are highly political terms that we have to understand. Inclusive means that whatever they impose on us as acceptable and norm, be it homosexuality, be it transgender, we must be open and we must be inclusive and we must be open to the dictates, to their dictates. And this is a prerequisite for our prosperity, for us gaining prosperous societies. These are the precepts of globalization. Are you here? Yeah. Sorry, I'm having some problems here with
That's fine. You're on the Tony Blair slide.
And we must understand, beloved brothers and sisters, that the agenda of globalization is about one world government. It is about the global white supremacist power structure and their plan to bring about a one world government. Africa is the final frontier in terms of bringing about this one world government. And Paul Kagame has been found to be a malleable and valuable agent of globalization. These are the words of Tony Blair. He says, let's not give up on a country, Rwanda, that's seen the most remarkable progress over the last few years, and where the aid money that we spend is probably pound for pound, dollar for dollar, the best aid money you could spend. Now, what does Tony Blair really represent? When Tony Blair says aid money is well spent, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, what is he saying? Is he saying Africa and African people, Rwandans, as African people, are getting the best out of their work in Rwanda? No. What he's saying is our pounds, our dollars that we are spending in Rwanda is yielding maximum benefits. It's yielding maximum benefits. And this is our man. Tony Blair describes him as my friend, my personal friend, and a visionary. Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, which is also in Rwanda, describes Paul Kagame as one of the greatest leaders of our time. Now, when these white supremacists, European imperialists, Euro-American imperialists, describes an African leader as their friend in political terms means he serves our interest. Our interest is secure with him. Greatest leader. Well, African leaders who are uncorruptible and progressive historically are hated by the imperialists, the European imperialists, and they're usually assassinated or deposed. Okay? So we have to be clear about what is being said here. And we also have to be clear, brothers and sisters, and I'll pause here so that others can come in. We also have to be clear that the transformation that we see taking place in Rwanda presently, that is looking so good on the surface, the progress that appears to be being made in education, in social welfare, in healthcare, in to some extent in science and technology, economically. We must remember that Rwanda is being heavily aided by Britain and America. It's extremely important that we understand this, that this is not a transformation that is taking place where Africans in Rwanda are drawing on their own agency and on the agency of other Africans from the rest of the African continent. It is about money being poured into Rwanda by Britain and America. It is about foreign investments that are being poured into Rwanda. Foreign investments that are designed to advance the interest of multinational corporations, to suck the energy out of the economies. This is not an indigenous transformation that is taking place, or a transformation that is taking place as a result of the agency of African people. So let me pause there, my beloved sister, and I am happy to come back and hopefully. Are you seeing the images at the moment, my sister?
We are, my brother. We're seeing the image of
Kagame
and Brother Clinton. Sorry, Brother Clinton. Who am I talking about? Yeah, we are seeing the images. Trying to get us back on. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Brother Leader Bandaka, for that wonderful opening, for laying the foundations for us.
Tenamwari,
are you not hearing me?
I can't hear you.
Is anybody else hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear all of you.
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure why, but everyone else is hearing me right now, Leader. What's just happened?
Can I just ask you, sister, give me a nod or head shake. Were you hearing me?
Yes.
Up until I just concluded.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, we were hearing you fine. Maybe you need to log out and log back in again, Brother Leader.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Brother Leader, for that very informative presentation. I mean, every time I hear you and you present, I learn something new, I must say. And that was already, we've only just got started with this discussion, and a very insightful perspective on Rwanda as well. And we're going to come back round to have a discussion on the points you've raised, Leader Bandaka, because so many invaluable points that you've raised that we really must discuss. But before we go into the discussion, let me now allow our brother and our sister to contribute. So first of all, we're going to go over to Sister Sheila for one of her stories. Okay, then we'll go to Brother Kwame Gonza. Yeah, so we're going to lighten it up a bit. We don't want you to forget any of the nuggets that our brother Leader Bandaka has just dropped, because we're going to be discussing it. But let's first hear from Sister Sheila.
Thank you. It's an honor to share these stories with you. Thank you, Brother Leader Bandaka. You've given me so much. And every time Brother Leader Bandaka speaks, I get new things. Like the last time he was here, you spoke about Gaddafi, and I completely did a 360 roundabout turn about him based on what he said. And it held true that truly he was an Islamist someone. He wasn't really an African brother. Thank you to you. I learned that from you. And now the information flows to me, and I can see truly he was not one of us. Anyway, a few years back, I was invited by a friend of mine who was teaching in a school that was owned by the second president of Kenya, the longest serving president of Kenya, called President Moi. He died last year or the year before. He was a tyrant. He was a dictator. Not very different from Kagame. Anyway, so he owned the school. He grabbed several schools, this president, grabbed several schools, several state schools, and became his property. So he had this school, And a friend taught there. And the friend said that I should go around there and see how the school was. I was looking for a teaching job. And he said, come here, see how the school is. It may be a good place for you to teach. Now, the president's not official home, the president's personal home was in the school. So occasionally it was a boarding high school. Occasionally he would come and join them for dinner, for school dinner. He would come and join them. The whole school, he would sit and eat with them. So on the day I went, the president was coming to eat. So I thought, this is an honor. I've never met the president. I may as well come. So I went, and during the dinner, because he was coming, everything was being prepared to high standard. And he came, food was put at the table. We were all sitting, and they said we cannot eat until he comes in. And we eat only after he started eating. And immediately he stops eating. Everyone has to stop eating. You stop, and everything is taken away. And then he gives a speech, then he goes. So the man came quite late. So the food was there, but we could not eat. We were waiting for him to start. And then he ate. I tell you, he ate like 3 or 4 mouthfuls. Then he stopped. And all of us had to stop. We could not continue. We were told immediately he stops eating, we all stop. So we stopped. And all this food was taken away. And he gave a speech, finished the speech, and then that was it. So I left with a friend and said, I'm still hungry. I had not even, started eating. And they said, that's the rule. When he finishes eating, everyone has to stop. You cannot eat after he has finished eating. And then I said, where did this come from? And they say that it came from the Queen, that the Queen of England, when you are sharing a table with her and she stops eating, everyone else stops eating. Now, years later, I was invited in the UK in a very high-end thing. It was they were rewarding these very high-end charities that work in Africa, and they have a end of the year party, and they honor one person, they reward one person with something for being exemplary. So I was invited to this party, and the person they were honoring was Kagame. The party was in one of the top-end hotels in the UK where the Queen goes for her tea. It's called the Dorchester, that the Queen goes for her tea there. So I was invited there. So I thought, yeah, I may as well go there for the Dorchester experience. So I went, and Kagame was the guest of honor. He was coming to be awarded medals and honors for being an exemplary leader and all that kind of thing. So when we were seated in the room, before dinner came, first of all, they told us that they had taken something off the menu. I don't know if it was chicken or lamb or whatever, because Kagame does not eat it. So because he does not eat it, it cannot be on the menu. So they took it off, completely took it off, because they didn't want to draw attention to him that he doesn't eat this meat. So everything that was on the menu were things that he eats. Anything that he didn't eat, they did not put on the menu. So all of us were restricted to pick from the things that he ate. This was one of the conditions for him to come to attend this event. The other condition for him to attend the event is that everyone had to be seated by a certain time. And then when we were all seated in our places, before he came, his men had to enter the room, and they were going through the entire room checking for security. Remember, this is a very high-profile event with very high-profile white people. The entertainment was Sir Bob Geldof. I don't know if you've heard of him, the one of Live It. He was the entertainment. So you can imagine how high it was that this singer is the entertainment for the event. So anyway, we were sitting down, and this man came, and it looked like a movie. This men in black suits with things in their ears and everything, just swarmed in, and they were going around the room, checking curtains, checking everywhere. And we hadn't been informed that once he enters the room, no one is standing up, no one is doing anything. We are all sitting. And the next time we will stand is when he stands out to leave. So after they checked the room, I think they communicated amongst themselves that it was okay. And then he entered. But all these men stood on each side. So the whole place, there were these men in black suits standing all over the room. And then he came in with his men. I must say he is really tall and really, really slim. So he came, sat at the high table, and then the meal started. I must say I ate quite quick, just in case if it was the type of him stopping to eat, and then we all have to stop. This was not catching me this time round. Anyway, so he finished. After the meal was finished, he went to give a speech and he spoke about the things he had done in Rwanda, spoke about computers and Wi-Fi everywhere, spoke about the parliament having so many women. He really marketed himself, and people are really cheering. The people there, other than his security and his team from Rwanda, and maybe 2 or 3 guests that were Africans from the UK, the rest of the team was all white people. So they were the majority there. So they were clapping for him, and the organization promised the work they were going to do in Rwanda. They promised a lot of money. They said by next year, we are going to educate this number of people in Rwanda. We are going to give this number of computers. This is now the UK organization saying what it is they're going to do in Rwanda and doing all these things for free. So after the meeting ended and now it was time for socializing, he left. He didn't remain. He left. I think when you're a president, you don't hang around people. So he left. But some of his security people remained behind because he was still in the hotel. So I went to speak to one of the security people to see if I could also lobby and see if I could go to Rwanda myself and do my own business a little bit. And they said, yeah. They gave me a presidential card and said, when you get in Rwanda, do get in touch with us. I haven't been to Rwanda. And I think if I go, they probably have forgotten me by now. Why am I bringing this story? First and foremost, to show that a lot of these things that we do, as Brother Leader said here, they are not indigenous to us. Like the example of President Moi stopping to eat and everyone stopping and saying the Queen does it. Like, for example, President Kagame coming, and when he's there, we can only eat what is on the menu, what he eats. If he doesn't eat it, it's not going to be on the menu. This gives you an idea of what kind of people these are. First of all, they are people with so much ego in their heads. Now, if you have a leader that has got so much ego, there is no way this leader will serve the people. When they become so petty to the point that they say, if I don't eat this, no one is eating it. If I stop eating, everyone has to stop. You can see this level of pettiness. It doesn't just stop on simple things like this. It goes further on policy. It goes further on matters to do with the law, matters to do with governance. These are the kind of people, these are the kind of leaders we put in these places. These are the leaders who oppress us. And as Brother Leader has also said, if you see the oppressors, the imperialists, cheering an African leader to the point that they call him to reward him and say, we want to come in your country. Not only are we awarding you this medal and recognizing your work, we are also wanting to come to your country and do some more work with you. And they're cheering and they're bowing down to what you're saying. Like you're saying, everyone has to, when I come, everyone has to sit, no one to stand. I say, right away, we'll all sit, we'll not stand. When they're being this very nice and accommodating to you, know that there is more that is playing at the backhand. There is so much more. So when I come to Tony Blair, when Tony Blair is so invested in Africa and he wants, to come to Africa and do these great things and save the African people, since when has any imperialist come to Africa and helped us and we've remained helped? Since when? It has never happened. Whenever they come to Africa to help us, they give one bag and they take hundreds of bags. So we end up worse off than had they never come at all. But this is where I ask our people, why don't we learn? Why don't we ever learn? Why don't we ever learn? Why do we always fall for the same tricks over and over again? And why do we put up with it? Why do we put up with these people that show us that even at the personal level, they are very petty, very mean, very dictatorial? Why do we put up with them that we now give them high office when even at the basic human level, they are not kind, they are cruel, they are arrogant, they patronize? Why then do we give them the state machinery? Why do we then give them power? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves, because we are the ones giving our power away. We're the ones that are giving validation to these people. We're the ones that are encouraging them, and we're letting them be our spokespeople. And they're the ones now that are selling us down the river. And we are cheering them because the oppressor is saying, this is my personal friend. This is the visionary leader. And we are cheering while we who are there experiencing these things in real time, we know matters are very different. And I finish by saying that Rwanda as a country has become a very petty country. I have used Rwanda Air. I've used it to go to Kenya. And when we reached in Rwanda, they have a policy: you cannot use paper bags, you cannot use plastic bags in Rwanda. They actually fine you if you have a plastic bag, whether you are a foreigner. Well, they fine African foreigners. They were fining me until I removed my British passport, and then they kind of like said, okay, fine, next time don't do it. Had I not removed my British passport and removed the Kenyan one, I would have parted with a few coins there. But now they took the paper bag away from me and didn't give me anything in return, to keep my stuff. So I had to give them the paper bag and remained with my stuff hanging, stuff that I'd bought from the duty free at Heathrow. So I remained with it. Remember, Heathrow will give you the plastic bags. But then you reach Rwanda, which was just a transit on my way to Nairobi, and they fine me for the plastic bag. They take it away. They don't give me an option. So I asked just basic kindness, like, what else can I use? And they just didn't care. So I had to carry my things when I was going on the plane. I had to carry them on my hand. Now, to me, that is pettiness, and it's just being cruel. And this give you an indication of the way the country is. And when you talk to the people in the country, you find it's a dictatorship. As much as we talk about Rwanda having developed and having clean roads and having this, it is not out of the volition of the people. There is dictatorship. There's no breathing. It's like having a very harsh teacher that if you dare make noise, that teacher is going to rain blows on you. That is exactly what is happening in Rwanda. They are under dictatorship. So the rules that you see happening, the things that you see happening, they are not coming from a place of joy and a place of willingness. They're coming from a place of duress and distress. And Rwandese cannot speak ill of the government. They cannot criticize the government. They cannot tell you things are wrong. They will tell you it's brilliant, it's wonderful. And then they really reap a lot of mileage from the genocide. They said, you know what? Look, we stood up after the genocide. Here we are thriving. This, and they report parrot fashion. What I had Kagame said at the meeting in Dorchester Hotel when he came, Rwandese repeat parrot fashion. Word for word, he said, all the progress is made. So there's kind of like reverence towards the president. He has stayed for too long. 2000 to 2021, 21 years, that is a long time. He needs to go. I give thanks.
Time for change. Rise up, Sister Sheila, as always, educating through her stories. So first-hand experience there of President Kagame, and what a lasting impression he's left there in terms of pettiness. Lots of comments in the chat. Let me just bring in a few, and then we're going to go over to Brother Kwame. Then we're going to open up for a bit of the discussion and go back to Leader Bandaka. Okay, so we've got Butney Lee in the house, watching us from NC. Where is that? Someone tell me. Obiamani said, them, that's our leaders, probably no longer know these food. Oh, he's still referring to Afrijamo there. Instead, caviar and partially cooked meat with the blood still in it. That sounds like the food of cannibals there. Is that the level that we're prepared to go to, just to be able to sit around the table with former colonizers? Is that what's going on? Raw Reality says Kagame is a dictator in Rwanda, just like Papa Doc and Baby Doc Duvalier were in Haiti. The common thing they had was that they were heavily supported by the US and Britain. A common trait there, definitely from what we're hearing. Once we've got a leader that's heavily supported by the UK and the US, as Brother Leader was saying, it's because that particular leader is representing the interests of the former colonizer. That's why, they regard them as their leader. And that reminds me of President Mugabe when, they knighted him, made him a sir. They loved President Mugabe when he, wasn't troubling the land. Oh, he was the best president in the whole of Africa. The minute the people then took back the land and he stood out the way and allowed them to do it, he became the tyrant, the worst enemy, the leader who'd been there for far too long. We see these patterns over and over again. And, if they're bigging up one of our leaders, it's because they're representing their interests. And we need to be mindful of that. So this is very, very concerning indeed, because, we want an Africa where the people of Africa are the ones that are benefiting from Africa's resources. We want leaders in Africa who are going to be representing the interest of their people, representing the interest and using the resources of the people for the people. But if what we're hearing is that, you know, the corporations that own the big industries in the country actually foreign. You know, they're allowing so-called investors to come in who are only just coming in to reap and raid and pillage the land and take all of the resources back to their own countries and give very little in return to the people. You know, these are not the sorts of governments, these are not the sorts of investments. This is not what we call development at all. So let's rise up. Black Acres of the Gambia in the house. Sister Cynthia, Brother Rick, rise up yourself. I also see we've got in the house Mondai from Haiti, live and direct from Haiti. Greeting everyone from Port-au-Prince in Haiti. Rise up yourself, Mondo. Doing some great works on the ground out there. And I know I glimpsed our brother, Happy Companion in the house. Rise up yourself, Happy Companion. African Lastborn, talking about the colonial mindset. Yes, indeed. We've got to, you know, decolonize the mind. You know, on the discussion that we were having on my radio show this morning, that's one of the biggest things that we need to do. When you think of Sister Sheila's stories that she was telling us, these are the stories of individuals with a colonized mind. We've got to decolonize the mind. This is the, you know, the final steps that we need to take. This is where we need to move things on now from where our great liberating, revolutionary founding fathers, African fathers left it. This is what they've left us to do, to complete the works that they started. They successfully managed to remove, and our heroes and sheroes remove the physical chains. Now we've got to remove the mental chains. Brother Kwame Gonza, let me bring you in at this stage. A wonderful young leader that we've got coming up in the midst. Brother Kwame, please take yourself off mute, introduce yourself, and let's hear what you have to say on this really important topic for discussion today.
Oh, thank you so much, Sister Shanice. Thank you so much, Brother Leader Mbandaka. And thank you, Sister Sheila. I'm really very glad to be on the same platform with you guys. Brother Leader, I'm always learning from you, so much knowledge. I remember the first time I got to interact with you, I say that you have so much knowledge about our continent than many of us, even who were born on the continent, even though you are outside of the continent. So you care about so much our continent. And this belief in me has been always that the diaspora have contributed so much. The African diaspora have contributed so much on this continent when it comes to liberation, and the diaspora are going to contribute so much in rebuilding this continent and liberating it completely from all forms of imperialism and neocolonialism. I would like also to thank Brother Mbandaka for the foundation he laid. Like Honorable Marcus Garvey said, that if we don't have our culture and history, you know, if we lose those things and we don't understand the importance of history and culture, then, you know, we cannot understand ourselves. We will be like a tree, you know, without roots. So we really need to pay close attention to the importance of history. We cannot just drop and start talking about subjects without laying the foundation and understanding the history. And I believe that Brother Lead has done that very well. There is another man who said that the farther I look into history is the farther I see into the future. And today I believe that that has been manifested very well through the foundation that has been laid by Brother Mbandaka. For me, I will add slightly. He has said so much that I will just, what I will say is just a compliment to complement what he has said. But I will start with saying a quote, reading a quote from Nkrumah, which he gave in 1965 in a book called Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism. Nkrumah said that Africa is a paradox which illustrates and highlights neocolonialism. Her earth is rich, yet the products that come from above and below the soil continue to enrich not Africans predominantly, but groups and individuals who operate to Africa's impoverishment. That is neocolonialism. The last stage of the imperialism is the book. Now, to understand Rwanda, our subject today is that is Rwanda really an African miracle? For me, Rwanda represents what is possible in Africa, and at the same time, what is impossible. This statement may be contradictory to some extent, but the great philosophers always say that every object has the seeds of its own death or its own destruction within it. So, as human beings, we walk as yes. Thank you so much, Brother Leader Mbandaka. Very, very wonderful piece. So, we as human beings, we have within ourselves, you know, the good and the bad. So we are sort of also living contradictions when you look at us as human beings. So it is humans, you choose to either be good or you can choose to be bad. So that is the two, contradicting sides. So when I look at Rwanda, for me, that is what I see. But when we go back to history, as brother leader started, we see that to understand very well Rwanda, you have to go to Uganda and look at Uganda also, because the forces that shaped what is happening in Rwanda, they started in Uganda itself. The people in Rwanda and Burundi, actually, they are very much related to the people in Uganda. When you go, for example, to Western Uganda, they are very, very related. President Kagame started out, he was born in 1957. During that period, it was the Hutus who were ruling, because he belongs to the Tutsis. But there was an escalation and a struggle by the Tutsis to regain control, as the ruling class, because they had been brought up and propped up by these two regimes, these colonialists, the Germans and the Belgians, to try to show, to divide, like Brother Mbandaka said, that to divide. They wanted to use the divide and rule method, and they used it very well to divide these people. And if you look at this method, they used it in many, many places. When you go, for example, to Nigeria, in Nigeria, they went to the northern part and they chose the minority group, which is the Muslims, and they used it because it was easy to control. The minority group in the north was easy to control, so they used it to dominate the south, which is the Yorubas and the Yorubas and the other groups, in Nigeria. So the British used this very well. When you come to Uganda also, they came and used they used the Buganda, and they used also the north. So they would dominate one side and give it all the good things, and then they would use the others as slaves, sort of. So this is their tactics which they use. Even when you go to Ghana, they use the northern part of the country as a source of labor, and they used the southern part as the princes. So you can see that even in Ghana, when Nkrumah came to power, Nkrumah had to give certain incentives to the northern part of the country in order for the country to be able, for the northern part to be able to catch up with the south. For example, he introduced free education in the northern part of the country, because the northern part of the country had been left behind. It was a source of labor for the British to farm cocoa in the south. So these tactics of divide and rule have continued, to go on. So Kagame leaves Rwanda when he's young with his family, because they were being persecuted by the Hutus who were in power that time. They had taken power and they ran to Uganda, and he grows up in Uganda. He schools in Uganda. He enters the Ugandan military with President Museveni. They fight in the bush, and they were fighting against Dr. Milton Obote, who was a very good friend of Nkrumah during that period. And consequently, when Obote was overthrown, Then they fought against Idi Amin, and that is how President Museveni came to power. And both of them, President Kagame and Fred Rijema, they become very big officers in the, in the Ugandan army, and to the extent that by the time Rijema raises an army of around 4,000 troops to go and attack Rwanda to overthrow the government, Kagame had been sent to the United States by President Museveni to go and study and increase his military, prowess. So when Kagame is in the United States, then Rijema, in the process of attacking Rwanda, which was that time governed by the Tutsis, Rijema is killed. Fred Rijema was killed during that process. And then that is the period within which President Kagame comes back to Rwanda and he takes over the process of leadership. But he was in the United States during that period. Now, on the other side of the Hutus, the United, these imperial countries also, like France was supporting the Hutus who were in government that period. So you can see that France starts there with its policy. So they continued this policy because the country came from Germany. Now it went to the Belgians, and now we see that in the 1950s, it is in the hands of the French. They are intervening. So you can see Kagame's struggle with France, where it comes from. He's why he was angry, very angry with France, because France in the beginning started immediately to support the opposite direction, which was the government during that period. Both of them and the UN, France and the UN, they were supporting the government which was sitting. Now, also another thing which is going to come in play here, we have to understand the Democratic Republic of Congo, the station, how is Rwanda stationed and how is Uganda stationed. We have the Democratic Republic of Congo also, which is a very, very important part of Africa. Democratic Republic of Congo, we all know that it is the richest part of land, the richest piece of land on earth. And that piece of land, actually, the richest part of the Democratic Republic of Congo is the eastern part. Okay, so the eastern part is where we locate countries like Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. It's very, very important to understand this part of African history and African, geopolitics, if I may say, African geography, if I may say. So anyone who controls these countries, these two countries here, all three countries, Uganda, Burundi, and Rwanda, around there, he controls the eastern part of Congo, which is very, very rich in minerals, all types of minerals. You can talk of all minerals, cobalts, which they are using, coltan, which they are using in computers, cobalt now, which is being used now in electric, vehicles, which they are doing now, batteries, gold, timber, you can talk of copper, everything is there. So we have to understand that Kagame, if he's ever being used, it is because of that purpose. Countries like the United States, France and Britain, they want access to these minerals. And it is very important to understand that. So for me, when I look clearly, I see that we as Africans, we are facing this contradiction that on one side, you see Kagame is like speaking for Africans in many, many cases when you look at his interviews. And then at the same time, you see that he's dialoguing with the colonialists. So these are the contradictions which you see, which you see that even Nkrumah himself saw them. But we as Pan-Africanists, we have to face them. We have to face the task of reconciling these two parts which are contradicting in order for us to define ourselves and where we want to take the continent. So from there, I would like to pause there, and I will come back later. Thank you so much, Sister Shanice.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame Gonza. I've just managed to get a map up, and I just want to bring that up on screen. so the family can, you know, see what you were talking about now in terms of the geography and precisely where Rwanda is strategically positioned. So here we can see if you've got Rwanda, there's Uganda on its doorstep. It's also neighbored, as you say, by the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the richest piece of real estate in the whole of Africa. You've got Burundi, you've got Tanzania. Now, Tony Blair, as we know, he's just managed to get Tanzania. And so he's got all of his administrators working. You know, what Tony Blair does as well, and just to remind people in case they came late when Leader was talking, when Tony Blair goes in to support these African governments, he brings a team with him who take up strategic positions in the African government's, call it the Home Office. They are the administrators, they're running the show within these governments. I mean, what sane government has foreign agents and foreign ambassadors in their midst, running their business, making their decisions for them? You know, especially, you know, those with the history, the sort of history that Britain has in Africa is absolutely unbelievable. You know, it's like you've got your house and you're supposed to be protecting your people and the interest of the family in the house, and you let in people whose ancestors had raped and murdered and pillaged your family members, brutalized them, you know, in the most horrific ways, the most savage ways. And, you know, as if we don't learn, they come back knocking the door with a smile on their face, and we open the door and we let them back in again. I mean, what is wrong with our people? Clearly, you know, we are not in our right mind as Africans. And, you know, in our show this morning, we was talking about the fact that there is a silent war that is being waged against us as a people. And this silent war, you know, is happening on a multiplicity of levels, you know. So here we're talking about the takeover of African governments that's happening via the back door. And brother Leader Bandaka, you said that this is already happening in 15 African countries. I think you said, I don't know if you know those countries where, you know, the Blair Institute is actually running the governments. If you have that information, please do bring it to us. So let's go to the chat and let's get some contributions, shall we, from our people in the chat, and then let's go back to let's put the Leader on mute there. So going over to the chat, Orbia man, let me laugh when I see this one. He said, imagine all my friends and associates having to eat patties because I love it. He said there would be a war for things like dumpling and bammy. Orbia man, you make me laugh, you see. Oh, this one, knowledge and power, what's he saying here? The question needs to be, why is everybody stopping and doing what others want? That's right. You know, we are not in our right mind. If we were in our right mind as Africans, we would be turning up to these events in our African garbs. You know, our security would be turning up in their African garbs. You know, and we would have our people around us. You know, we are just so far from our right minds. Let's quickly flick through and see what other comments we've got in the chat. Rise up, Sister Afrijamo, reminding us to remind you to please give us a like on the way in, okay? On the way in, please give us a thumbs up. Thank you so much. I've got YouTube algorithms working against me, holding down the viewings, holding down the likes. So I need you to work double hard, family, to try and get these important messages out there to our people. Right, Kwame Ossi, I'm going to drop the link in the chat as well about 20 minutes before the end of the show for those who might want to jump in and make some comments from the platform, because some wonderful discussions going on in the chat as well. Kwame saying Rwanda is a fascist state with no real ruler but a white supremacist puppet. We often talk about puppet governments, shadow governments, you know, people who appear to be leading, but behind the scenes, they're the corporations and the elite that's bleeding the countries dry. You know, we need to be aware. I mean, someone commented and said, you know, I don't like these discussions. We're always so critical, but we have to critique what's going on. We can't just accept everything on face value like we did the missionaries 400 years ago, and the rest is history, as they say. Today, we've got the missionaries coming back. You know, we were looking at the story of what's going on in Haiti. 17 missionaries kidnapped, and it turns out that at least one of them is a pedophile, a known pedophile who's been carrying out pedophilia activities, raping young boys in Haiti for over 20 years, and still, you know, was back in Haiti again, and is now one of those who has been kidnapped. We have to critique. We have to look at what's going on in Africa. If we don't, we can't expect anybody else to be, you know, looking out for our interests. I can see our sister Sheila's black. Welcome, black sister Sheila. Hopefully you're not frozen there. Oh, looks as though her screen may have frozen. We'll bring her back in. Let's go to Brother Leader Bandaka for part 2 of his presentation. I mean, there is so much. Brother Leader, yeah, where's my notes? Divide and conquer. We need a whole show on that, because we really as a people need to you know, where tribalism actually gets us. We need to look at the history of where we have allowed, you know, our petty disputes to get in the way of the greater good of us all, and has resulted in, you know, us being in the situation that we're in today, having come out of, you know, such evilness and wickedness. And, you know, we're talking about them assisting Rwanda, bringing science and healthcare, etc., to the country. If we had any idea as a people, you know, the heights at which our cities and our kingdoms and our empires were prior to the invasions of the Europeans, we would be looking way beyond the systems that they've got in place today. And we would be looking to see, you know, how our ancestors actually introduced and built, you know, some of the scientific, you know, monuments and buildings and technologies and inventions that we had yesteryear. But let me, because I so want to hear from Leader Bandaka, allow Leader to come back to us. Rise up, Brother Leader, honor all the time.
Tendai Mwari, and all honor received and returned in the spirit of reciprocity. Tendai Mwari, give thanks to Brother Kwame, Sister Sheila, for the kind, respectful and loving words that you have expressed to me. It's well received. And, you know, the contributions as well. As the saying goes, iron sharpeneth iron. So even as I am being appreciated for what I share, I am also appreciating you, because I'm also learning from you. Yeah. So we give thanks and praises. When we talk about the system of divide and conquer on the African continent, it's a very vicious and insidious system. Brother Kwame gave us some more flesh on the historical background, which is very, very important. We will not understand Rwanda if we don't understand the historical context. Yeah. And the kind of accounts that we're given are very, very, you know, crass and very sparse of actual analysis, in-depth analysis. For example, we're told that the Tutsis were always oppressing the Hutus, and the Hutus were, you know, being, you know, marginalized and exploited by the Tutsis, which is not the full story. It's not the full account. And we're told that the colonial powers, buttressed the Tutsis, etc. It was far more complex than that. from the very outset, there was resistance against the colonial powers. There was resistance by the Rwanda people, whether Tutsi or Hutu. We can go back as far as the 1920s, where the king, Mutara II, Mwami Mutara II, Mwami is king. Mwami Mutara II was resistant to the colonial powers, the Belgians, on many levels, and also the Catholic Church. We must not underestimate or eliminate the role that the Catholic Church played in the colonization process, because they played a very profound and fundamental role. Yeah. Now, one of the things that that Mwami Mutara II refused to do was to accept Christianity. They tried to impose Christianity on him. He refused to accept Christianity. And they simply deposed him. You know, they just got rid of him and exiled him because he was said to be an obstruction to the process of civilization because he wouldn't accept Christ. His son, Mwami Mutara III, was put on the throne. Now, his father refused to allow the church to instruct him in Christianity, but they did it secretly anyway, and tried to force him to accept Christianity, which he did eventually in 1943. He accepted the Christian religion, was converted, and then in a couple of years after that, he announced Christianity as a state religion. Yeah? But bear in mind, this is from 1931. He came on the throne. The historical records show that there were resistance from that time among the Tutsi. Resistance was taking place amongst the Tutsis from that time. And even the king Mutara III himself refused and resisted taking on Christianity. Right up, it took 12 years for them to force him to take on Christianity. That said, the history shows that he tried to transform Rwanda and the relationship with the Hutu and the Tutsi, and started to redistribute land and cattle amongst the Hutu, tried to forge better relationship and mend relationships between the Hutu and the Tutsis, which had been destroyed by the Belgians and the Germans and the divide and conquer scheme. Yeah? Listen carefully, beloved brothers and sisters. Listen carefully, because this is important. This is now from the 1940s that he really started this process. By the 1950s, whilst Mutara is trying to mend relationships between Hutu and Tutsi, the colonial forces now invited the Rwanda people, mainly the Hutu, they started to implement the electoral system and start to entice them with the vote. Yeah? And start to bring in the so-called democracy. And so the Belgians, the Catholic Church, with some backing from the French, helped the Hutu to set up a party which they call the Parme Hutu, which is the party for the emancipation of Hutu. 1957, they write a manifesto. And this manifesto was principally and primarily about liberating themselves, not from the Belgians, but from the Tutsis. Now, by 1959, listen carefully. By 1959, King Mutara is assassinated in 1959. How was he assassinated? He was given a vaccine, a vaccination. Okay? He was assassinated by way of a vaccination. Then there was a massacre that followed. A massacre that followed the assassination of King Mutara III. Because he now was trying to mobilize the people of Rwanda, the Ban-Rwanda people, to fight for their independence, fight for their liberation. Now he started this liberation, this independence movement. And so the Belgians now switched allegiance to the Hutu with the backing of the Catholic Church. Yeah? And funded the Hutus, supported the Hutus in starting his Parma Hutu party. The king is assassinated. The Belgians continue to manipulate the politics of Rwanda. 1962, Rwanda becomes independent with a party dominated by the Hutu. Now, let me just back up. This is a big subject, so I'm trying to move quickly because I realize time is going, and I know I'd like our sister and brother to come back in. But what's also very important for us to understand is that this massacre that occurred in 1959, Kagame was 2 years old. You heard Brother Kwame said earlier on he was born in 1957. He was 2 years old. His family had to flee Rwanda as a result of the massacre that was taking place, primarily of Tutsis, but it wasn't only Tutsis. It was Hutus who would not also go along with the Belgians and perpetuate division among their people. So Hutus were also exiled from Rwanda. In fact, Fred Regima, that was mentioned earlier on, was a Hutu. Bear that in mind. And he was also in exile in Uganda. They were raised in Uganda in British and American refugee camps, where they were educated and socialized in British and American refugee camps, and where they were sent to British boarding schools, mainly British boarding schools, and where they were manufactured and cultivated by the British and the Americans, right? You heard our brother say that in 1990, when the Hutu invaded their country, came back into the country to invade the country, it was led by Regima, who was killed on the second day, shot in the head on the second day. He was in charge of the army. Where was Kagame? He was in America. What was he doing in America? He was in an American military training camp, being trained by the Americans. Now, you heard Brother Kwame say that Museveni sent Kagame to America for military training. Also, we must understand that America was already behind Museveni, and Museveni's military operations to overthrow Milton Obote at the time. The Americans were funding him. He is also an agent of the United States of America. The United States of America funds the Ugandan army and trains the Ugandan army. The Ugandan army is like a police force in East Central Africa. They are operated and they are controlled by America. They are funded by America. They are equipped by America. They are trained by America. This is a context that we must understand. So Paul Kagame was manufactured from childhood. If we look at Rwanda now, Rwanda was a so-called francophone country. It's now anglophone. Rwanda, its official language is now English. The language of instruction in its schools is now English. Teachers have been instructed not to teach in French anymore, teach in English. Because Britain has now become the colonial power that is dominant. And to cut a long story short, we talk about the Congo. They have plans for the Congo. And that's why there have been invasions from Rwanda and Uganda into the Congo. And the plan was in 1998, so-called the beginning of the Second Congo War, when the president Laurent Kabila could not get the Ugandans and the Rwanda armies to leave his country after overthrowing Mobutu in 1997. Couldn't get them to leave the country because they had an agenda. What is the agenda? Cut a long story short. Britain intends to take over the Congo. And Rwanda is key in that process. When Ariel Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, is saying, thanking Kagame for opening up the African continent to Israel. And we hear subsequently Israel applying successfully for observer status in the AU. Understand the role that Kagame is playing on the African continent. Understand the role. And understand what Tony Blair represents in the world today. Is a major agent, he's a marshal in the globalization project, and he's aggressive. And he's extremely skillful in what he is doing. And sister, just to say, Sister Shanice, amongst the countries that are under the spell of Tony Blair, the failed politician. Go to the Chilcot report on the war on Iraq and see how Tony Blair was discredited by the Chilcot report. Here in Britain, a discredited politician, a morally discredited politician. He is the person that we hold in high value on the African continent. Understand this. So we have countries, if you go on the website, countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Togo, Tanzania, what are the other countries? Some of them slip me. Guinea is not on it, but I have seen I've seen footage where Tony Blair has said that he is in Guinea as well. His institute is in Guinea as well. I believe they're also in Mozambique. Yeah, 15. Tanzania makes it the 15th African country. Yeah, makes it the 15th African country at least. And the aim is for Tony Blair and his institute to continue to unleash itself on more and more African countries. And Rwanda is being held up as the beacon light that is supposed to shine throughout the African continent as the example. But I want to remind brothers and sisters of Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire was the poster child of Euro-American imperialism from the 60s onward, to the point that they backed the sellout, Yufebwani, so that his economy would outshine the economy of Osatefo Kwame Nkrumah. But when they had no more use and no more need for Cote d'Ivoire in the same way, they pulled out of Cote d'Ivoire. And everything started to fall apart. So I can't get excited about the developments that's taking place in Rwanda, because I know it's not sustainable. I know it's not driven by the African will. the African ingenuity. It's not driven by African agency. I know that Africans are not getting the maximum effect from the transformations that's taking place. I know it is to set up an economically viable mechanism for foreign investors to come in and exploit that country, and also to set up this this beacon light, or to shine this beacon light, in order to entice and seduce African nations and say this is the way to go. It's very, very deadly, and it's very dangerous, and we mustn't fall for it. And too many Pan-Africanists, I'm hearing too many Pan-Africanists who should know better, falling for this Rwanda miracle myth. Tendai Mwari.
Wow, wow, wow. Tendai Mwari, Leader Bandaka, as always, so deeply insightful, a lot of food for thought. And, you know, as you paint the picture there for us to see, you know, what is actually happening on the ground and put it within that historical context, it's very, very concerning indeed. All Pan-Africanists ought to be very concerned about what's happening in Africa right now. There is a slow takeover. The UK obviously couldn't get the backing of the European Union to its long-term plan, which was to take over Africa, hence why it left the Commonwealth. And now they've joined forces with America and Canada, and they're all involved in this.
You meant the EU? You meant the EU, sis, when you say the Commonwealth?
Yes,
the
EU. The EU. And Rwanda joined the Commonwealth as well. Yeah. You know, they ought to have been running in the opposite direction. But they joined the Commonwealth. I want to big up Barbados here as well, who, you know, are on a Pan-Africanist agenda. They are working towards their total liberation and total independence. They've recently crowned a queen as well, as they've rejected the British queen. You know, and this is where the African continent, the African countries on the continent ought to be going. They ought to be moving towards their total independence and sovereignty. And here we have country after country handing over the administration and the running of their country, you know, to their former colonizers. Our liberation revolutionary fighters.
Why do we say farmers, sis? Why do we say farmer?
Yeah, because they never left.
They never left. They've never left.
Never left. Wow.
Neocolonialism was a transformation of the system of colonialism. But the system of colonialism, as I keep telling people, neocolonialism is colonialism.
Yes,
it's
in a different dress. Yes, then just dress it up differently, like they dress up the missionaries differently and send them into Africa to do the scoping out, to find out, you know, from our stories, Sister Sheila, where the divisions are, where the, you know, the tribal disputes are, so that they can then exploit them for their own political and military gains. Wow. You know, if the audience is willing to stay with us this evening, you know, I'm happy for us to go over, and if our panel members have the time as well, because I really want to hear from Brother Kwame and Sister Sheila again, and to bring in some of the discussion from the chat. But this is such an important topic of discussion. We all, every African in every university, in every school, college, and on all of our platforms need to be talking about this gradual, slow takeover, the New World Order. You know, they say Africa is the last frontier, and they are eating up Africa bite by bite. We need to wake up and see what's really going on. Let me bring in Brother Kwame.
Just one sentence, if I may, sis. Just one sentence. Just to remind us of the fundamental principles of global geopolitics. Whoever controls Africa rules the world.
Yes.
Tendai Mwari. Thank you, sister.
Tendai Mwari, Leader Mandaka. Brother Kwame Gonza.
Thank you so much, Sister Shanice. Thank you so much, Brother Mbandaka. Thank you once again, Sister Sheila. Brother Mbandaka, whenever you are speaking, I don't want to, you know, I don't want you to stop. I just want to keep, I want to keep listening, because you have so much that the way you have digested, the affairs of the continent is really, impressive, and I really admire so much the knowledge you have of our people and our continent. I said that Africa is a contradiction. Rwanda represents the contradiction in Africa. On one side, what Africa is capable of becoming, and on the other side, the other part, that big contradiction, whereby we have one part of the continent being propped up, to create division. Because I'm saying this because there's a time when Nkrumah said that we should be aware of the colonialists and their tactics, that they have a tendency to say they tell us this one is better than the other one, to create these divisions, but they don't tell us that we should unite. So our struggle as a people should be towards the struggle for unifying Africa and bringing a union government. What we are seeing in Europe, we are seeing a lot of problems in Europe. We are seeing the European Union break up. You can see the wrangles which are going on in there. Now, Britain, after coming out of the European Union, it has to look for a way of surviving. It has, and that the only way which is remaining for where they can survive is Africa. This is the same situation when you talk of France. They are looking for a way to survive because of the changing geopolitical situation. We have seen demonstrations in France, a lot of them. The economy is shrinking. We have seen the recent summit where France hosted the African youth. So France has seen that the continent now has been handed to the youth. So they did not even invite these conferences, these France-Africa summits. They have been happening, and France has been calling the African leaders, but this time they did not invite even a single African leader. So what have they seen? They have seen that the continent has been given to the leaders. It has been given to the future. And why is this? All of them are trying to court. Some of them are trying to use tactics, looking at the future, like what France is doing, courting. And Britain is using all kinds of methods, like what we are seeing. When you look at people like Blair being declared as advisors in Tanzania, like recently, this news which has just come out, this is a pathetic situation. But can you say that Blair is just an advisor? No, you cannot accept that. We know that Britain is behind this. It moves through these people. It is moving, subtly. Pierre Lumumba calls it subtle moving. So it is moving subtly to try to come back to East Africa and other parts to try to colonize. And what I see in the future actually is a confrontation. Between these colonial powers. And let us not forget that history constantly repeats itself. That when we look at the First World War and the Second World War, all these wars were fought over Africa. And what we have seen recently is that France has come, before it held the summit with the African youth, it came and held a summit which was organized by the French Chamber of Commerce in Ghana, the French Chamber of Commerce in Kenya, the French Chamber of Commerce in Nigeria, the French Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. So what they were trying to do, or what they are trying to do right now, is that they are trying to pivot. France is trying to pivot from its former colonies or the countries where it exploited so much that there is nothing left there. Now it is trying to pivot to come to the former British colonies. That is why it tried to bring together some of the most powerful economies on the African continent: Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya. So that it was held, that summit was held recently also online. So these are the things which we must be aware of. We saw the African youth represent the continent at the recent French Africa Youth Summit. You know, they have so much knowledge. So we should understand that we have so much knowledge at this point, that the information has come so much that we should be in a position to challenge these people. When you look at people like Tony Blair, there is so many youth, African youth on this continent who are better than him. So much, so many are better than him when you talk of intellectual capacity, you know, when you talk of professionalism, when you talk of anything, you know, a lot of things which you can pick. There is a lot of things in which you can pick the African youth, a lot of African youth, and put them in the same position to challenge Tony Blair. So this shows you that he's not a special person. Even when you look at his academic credentials, his achievements, Tony Blair is not a special person that he should be coming to the African continent to advise anyone, to create organizations that are advising in anything. There's really nothing that Tony Blair should be advising us in. We know so much about the world today that we really don't need anything from Tony Blair. We really don't need anything from Macron. You know, combining the GDP of Africa, all of the African continent, our GDP is greater than the GDP of France. It's greater than the GDP of India. So these are not countries that should be summoning the Africans and the African leaders, for that matter. So I would like to call upon the African leaders that they should try and respect themselves. Once we have combined our energy, once we have combined our GDP, we are more powerful than these countries which are summoning us. Africa, France summit, you know, Africa, India summit. This should be rejected. We should reject this, because we have all that we need. We have the intellectual capacity. We have the human resources. We have the material. We just need to organize ourselves. So for this, for me, I would like to call especially the youth that they should come up and stand and oppose this kind. We have to resist this kind of hegemony that they are trying to use to take over Africa again, because we are the next generation, especially the youth. We have to stand up and resist these kind of, you know, incursions that are happening, that these colonies are trying to hang on. We know that they are suffering in Europe. We know that America is suffering, but we also have to stand in our position as the African youth and say they should not come this side. They should stay there. They should stay there, because now we are in a much better position to build our continent. We have everything we need. We really don't need these people, and we really don't need the World Bank or IMF or these organizations. So it is up to us to organize ourselves, join Pan-African organizations which are close to you, and let us stand and resist this kind of, you know, oppression and blackmail. They are using all kind of these tactics which they are using, and let us make it very clear that we really don't need anything from Tony Blair. We really don't need anything from Bill Clinton. We don't need anything from Obama. We don't need any advice from them. We know so much about the world now. We know how nations are built now. We really don't need the IMF to come here and give us anything. You know, our ancestors built a foundation for us. They achieved whatever they achieved, the liberation from slavery, they achieved the moderate political liberation, and we must build on that. We have to stand in that position and say our guidance is going to be taken from our ancestors and what they directed us, what they built, what they spoke about, what they envisioned for Africa to be. They didn't envision Africa to be like the United States. They didn't envision Africa to be like Europe. They didn't envision Africa to be directed by the IMF or the World Bank. So I believe that this is a position where we are supposed to stand, and we are supposed to stand firm as the next generation for us to be able to fight for this continent. And with that, I would like also to bring into that issue of Ethiopia. We have seen the Ethiopia face this backlash from the Western world recently, because people like Prime Minister Abiy, you can see his youthful energy, that in his youthful energy, he has said that we need to provide African solutions. We don't need to take the issue of the Ethiopia Grand Renaissance Dam to the UN. We don't need the United States in these affairs. So this is the Pan-African spirit which we need. He said the issue should be solved by the Africans at the African Union. We don't need the United States to come in. And he has faced backlash. They have started blackmailing that the war is happening in Tigray region. All kind of
whitemailing, my brother.
Yes. So this kind of blackmail is that people like this, people like Mugabe, we are supposed to stand behind them. We are supposed to stand behind Ethiopia. We are supposed to amplify the voice of Prime Minister Abiy, in Ethiopia. And then we amplify this voice. So as the youth, so I believe that this is what we are supposed, to do. Thank you so much, Sister Shanice.
Thank you so much, Brother Kwame. And as always, so much information, great information from the mouths of a young future leader. We exalt you, my brother, and it was music to my ear just hearing you say, we don't need, advice from Tony Blair. We don't need advice from, any of those Europeans. We know how to, build our empires, build our kingdoms, build our cities, but in your own words. And that's the spirit of the youth coming through. Absolutely agree. And this is the message that we need to get out loud and clear across the African continent. Now, I've seen in the chat as well where there's been a reference to how missionaries, how Christianity has actually been used, to as a weapon, really, as a tool for gaining access into Africa and for gaining control. And quite recently, I see it's suggested here that Christianity, that the Israelis actually use Christianity, as to influence the decision of Nigeria and a couple of other Christian countries to support, their call to be an observer on the AU. And we've got to wake up to all these tricks and devices and tools that are used, by outsiders to have their way over our continent. We're in a very serious situation right now. We need to remind ourselves of the very bitter, vicious war, that our liberation fighters had to fight so that they could win back the continent for us, the future generations. And here we are today, the future, not protecting the continent for the future that's to come. We have Israel, one of the most powerfulest military countries in the world. Look at what they're doing to their neighbors. And we're allowing them to come into Africa to observe our politics and our policies and our decisions, and then here we are, as 15 African countries allowing Tony Blair, a disgraced politician, someone who's been investigated back in the UK over the Iraqi war. Look at the mess of Iraq and Syria as a result of the decisions that he made, a walking blunderer. And, because of Christianity and this white savior complex, it seems that, some of our leaders who've been miseducated and indoctrinated by these same countries, looking up, to Tony Blair as their savior. Oh my gosh, not realizing that he's just, opening the door for his corporations and businesses and European organizations to come in and to take over. We are in a serious situation. There's a slow takeover of the continent happening right now. And if we don't wake up soon and realize what's going on, by the time we do, it may very well be too late. So, we're ringing the alarm bells loudly here. Now, I put the link in the chat because I see Kwame Ose is in the house dropping some nuggets of knowledge, and so many other people having good conversations in the chat. If you would like to join us on stage for a short while, you are welcome to do so. Afrijamo saying knowledge is power. Yes, it is indeed. And so many people in the chat is just rising up. The guest tonight for the knowledge that is being shared and that is being dropped in the house. Thank you so, so much. So let me go back over now to our beautiful sister Sheila. Let's hear from you, my sis.
It's an honor. It's an honor to listen to my people speak about this. I've learned so much. I come to these shows not only as a panelist, but also as a learner. I learned so much. And the importance of having conversations like this is we get to hear the truth from the source. Because if we rely on the media to tell us stuff, the media would only protect their interests. Like when I saw the announcement that Tanzania, the president of Tanzania has hired the services of Tony Blair to advise on something in Tanzania, it was being fronted as a very good thing. Like Tanzania has made a very great thing in hiring Tony Blair. That is what the mainstream media was putting the message across us. So when we have conversations like this, our people end up knowing that it's not a good thing at all. And this acts as a deterrent for future mistakes as this, and it awakens us all. A few years back, I dabbled in politics in Kenya. I thought, I didn't like how the politics in Kenya was going. In Kenya, white patriarchy system is very much rife, with the women taking second class, especially in matters to do with leadership. So there were things that were not going very right, and it would have made sense if we had women in places of power whereby they were influencing policy. So for example, in the Kenyan parliament, at one time, they were debating whether women should be given maternity leave or not. It had to be debated because maternity leave was not seen as something necessary. It was seen like if you are a woman and you're working and you want to have children, you shouldn't be given time off from work. Either resign from your work altogether or go have a child in the morning and the next day go to work. So there was nothing like maternity leave. And these men, the parliamentarians, had to debate in parliament whether it was necessary to have maternity leave or not. And this was just showing that we need women in some of these spaces, because if a woman had been there who has gone through childbirth, they will know that these men telling us that we don't need maternity leave, they will just say, oh, please. It's not that. So we need the voice of women. Like, for example, again, when they were, at one time, they were discussing whether marital rape exists. And actually, I think the parliament passed the motion that it doesn't exist, that marital rape does not exist. And their argument was, if a woman is married to a man, she is there for his sexual exploitation and sexual needs. So if she doesn't consent, he may as well just get his way with her, and that is not considered rape. You can't rape what is yours. You are taking it, and then you can't. So it was, again, so I'm just giving an idea why I felt at that time that we needed the voice of women in parliament. And I thought that if all women say they don't want to get involved in politics, then this is the problem we have. We end up having men in politics speaking for women, and in the process, we end up being this harsh decisions meted out against us. So a few of us women came together, actually quite many women came together, and we decided to form a platform for only women to discuss women matters. It was around the electioneering time, to discuss women matters and how we can support women candidates to go for these political positions. So the understanding was that this was a group of women coming to discuss the challenges that women face in the political arena, because many women were put off from campaigning for political positions because of the experiences they went through as political. Many women that would go on that campaign journey, they would do it just once and drop out midway. So we came up with this support group whereby, you know, we could have this force of women. In Kenya, the women are many. The women then were many than men. So if women came together and decided to vote for one of their own, we would get through. So we had this big platform where women would come and talk, and would come and talk freely, talk of the challenges that were there and how we could go against these challenges. And it became very clear that our main challenge was actually the men. We had men, if you were competing against a man, that man would use whatever it is in his, would use whatever resource he has to intimidate you, the woman, including hiring thugs to come and frighten you, including threatening you with rape. I mean, they were playing really dirty. So we were discussing this in the group, you know, I think the men are doing this, you know, when you're going up against the man, they would do whatever it is to do to put you off. These things, they were not doing it against their fellow men that were campaigning against them, because they knew the men would give it back to them. So they were doing it against the women. So we were discussing this. And one day when the discussion was very heated, where we decided we're going to name and shame the people, a few people, you know, in social media, people don't use their names. Let's say, for example, like a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group, people don't use their names. People use whatever name they want to do. So the assumption was that everyone in the group was a woman. However, when we were discussing the problems that women have and we were naming and shaming, some people came up, these are just 4 numbers, they came up and they were discussing and they were supporting this man or giving the other side of the story. And it looked very much they were in support of the men. Remember, this is a women's only group. So, and then we started asking, are these men or are these women? You know, we just started, why are you speaking? It looks like we're speaking to men because we are being gaslighted and stonewalled. The same way we get up there when we are speaking in the company of men and they're shutting us down. And that's when the admin came and said, we have a few men in the group. And we said, why do we have men in the group? This is the admin now saying, we have men in the group. And we said, why do we have men in the group? And the admin said that when women are on their own, without men, that feminine energy, said something like the feminine energy normally requires masculine energy to tame it down. That a group only with women cannot work. There needs to be a few men in the group to tame the women down. And so we asked, so how many men are here? And there were more than 20. Probably the ones that came up, there were many men. And the admin said that these men were in support of women, that these men were just not any random man. These were men that were in support of women in politics, that they were there as our allies. It caused a lot of disharmony within us, and eventually the thing had to disband because so many of us left because we didn't feel safe to have a group of only women and then have men in it and then claim that these men are for us. So why am I bringing this story here? I liken it to us coming together as an African people, wanting to liberate ourselves, but then going to the oppressors, bring them in our midst and say, these are our allies. These are people wanting to help us. You see, we even say that, you know, there's the Commonwealth whereby we are gathered together, we who are colonized by one people. We're gathered together so that we are under one umbrella, so that we can get help from the person that colonized us. It's not very different from women's group fighting men in politics and adding men in the group to tone them down. That is exactly what is happening here. When we Africans go without any prompt or any under duress, we actually go out of our way to look for these people and bring them in our camp so that they can help us. Like, for example, Tanzania, going out and getting Tony Blair. We should not forget that Tanzania, when President Magufuli was there, Tanzania was making strides without any Western help. Magufuli had kicked out all Western help, even deported wherever it is they wanted to help, said he doesn't need loans from them, and Tanzania was thriving. So there is really no excuse for Tony Blair to come now to advise on Tanzania when Tanzania was thriving without this Western influence. So there's really no justification. So when you hear that, oh, Tony Blair has been taken here to come and advise here, or he's been going here to come and advise, there really is no excuse to have that. In any case, any African country has got in excess of 1 million people. You want to tell me in the 1 million people, they cannot get even one to do that role? That they have to go and get someone from the oppressor's land to come and do that role? There is problems there. I see mental illness there. I see proper madness. That is just madness. It's mental illness. And we are on a self-sabotage mission. You cannot explain it any other way. You cannot go to someone who has been oppressing you and bring that person to be the one that is going to lead you to salvation. It cannot work. It does not make sense, especially when that person is being investigated in his own land. He is being thrown out. He will not even get a position in his own country. And then here we are taking like the rubbish that has been thrown out and we are putting jewels on a pig, and then feeling very proud about it. There is mental illness in our people. And as Dr. Arekana says, she said before, Dr. Arekana, former AU ambassador, has said that there is mental illness in the African people. Certainly it is there. Going by the decisions we make, like picking Tony Blair, who has got no good record in his name at all. And even if he had a good record, at the end of the day, he is an oppressor. He is an imperialist. We really, really should not bring these people in our land, welcoming them with open arms and saying, come, help us here and help us there. No, that one, we really need to have a lot of discussions as an African people. We need to stop relying heavily on our leaders, and we need to take power back to the people, and we need to start having this revolt. As this discussion was starting today, Brother Leader Mbadaka spoke about the Valerie's law and saying 100,000 signatures were needed so that we can go and so that the matter can be debated in Parliament. So you see, these are people taking matters in their own hands. These 100,000 people are saying, you know what is required from me is a signature. And I'm going to sign this signature so that this matter can be discussed by the lawmakers in Parliament. Why don't Africans do something like this? It doesn't have to be petition and signatures, but something whereby we are reacting to whatever is happening. Like if we hear that, oh, Tony Blair is doing this, we need to come up with channels in which we react in our own African way. In the UK setup, it is signing petition. In Ghana, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Kenya, there are ways in which people do protest, in which people, put the matters across. In Kenya, we normally do it on Twitter. There is something called Kenyans on Twitter. We have changed a lot of laws using Kenyans on Twitter. When we want to do something, the Kenyans on Twitter hashtag it, and it goes and goes, and it's relentless until something is done about it. Unfortunately, we always do it in an emotive, reactionary way, whereby we are choosing between two bad leaders. So we are taking one leader's side over the other one, but both of them are bad, and we now win the war against one bad leader for another one. So if we could put such matters in place, and this is for every African country, if we could all know that our voice counts, and we come out in unison together and refuse some things en masse, we will make a lot of progress. I give thanks.
We give thanks to you, Sister Sheila, as always. And, as you're speaking there, and I was hearing, when we are in our right minds as a people, once we've got knowledge of our history and our greatness, and once we really know who we are, we won't be going to anyone other than ourselves for any help at all. We will be turning to our community for help and assistance. And I really want us to be able to get the 100,000 signatures for the Valerie law, because where we are today, it's so important that happens. But when we're in our right mind, we will be appealing to our people to set up the organizations and the institutions that's needed so that we can protect ourselves. We'll be able to call on our men, and they will come to our defense, and they will protect us in our time of need. We will have those bodies, we will have those knights in shining armor, as we did back in the day, who will turn up in their, cavalier way to save us and to defend us as a people. We just need to get back into our right minds and stop depending on others who don't look like us, don't like us, and only have their own interest at heart, and have showed us that over and over again. Once we're in our right mind, we will see the greatness in ourselves. And it really is, such a serious and embarrassing situation on all of us as Africans when we have any African government feeling that there's no other African that they can turn to anywhere in the world, to help shape their policies and to build their countries, other than, having to go outside of their race, to a descendant of a Neanderthal, people who we civilize, we're having to go to them for them to develop our countries. It's a very worrying and concerning state of affairs. Okay, family, we will start to wind down now. Thank you so much. We have gone over by 19 minutes and you've stayed with us. So we thank you so, so much for that. Some really good conversations going on in the chat. Hence why I did drop the link. So if anyone from the chat wanted to jump on the platform, on the panel and say a few words live, you are welcome to do so. I'll post it one more time. I've just put the link in the chat there. You are welcome. But until then, let's go around the panel for some closing remarks. Wow, wow, wow. Brother Leader Bandaka, as always, the time just goes too quick when you're here with us, my brother, because I know you have a fountain of knowledge that you would love to share with us. And there is so much from what you've said that I would really have loved us to have had the opportunity to discuss in more detail. But the time, as always, flies too quickly. But my brother, if we can go to you, I think I've got someone joining us backstage who wants to go on. It's our brother Kwame Ossi. Welcome, brother Kwame. Can everyone else put their phone on mute, please? Sorry, brother leader, I will come straight back to you. We'll just bring in Kwame Ossi so that you can respond to some of the points he's making. And if you don't mind putting your phone on mute, everybody. Brother Kwame, welcome. Thanks for coming on board. You have been engaged in some really interesting discussion in the chat. We welcome you to the panel. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm very well, my sister, and greetings to the fellow panelists, sister and brothers. We give thanks.
We give thanks to you for joining us. You've heard the conversation and the discussion that we've been having this evening. What say you, my brother?
Yeah, I think one thing that was missed out was that we have to understand that there was a war for DRC. DRC, as has been mentioned, is the richest real estate on the planet, particularly the Katanga province. And as you saw in the map, Katanga province sits next door to Rwanda. So what happened is that Museveni and Kagame were proxy Western forces in that war, so-called Africa's first civil war. Okay, and they were fighting against the liberation of DRC. So Laurent Kabila, who was meant to be the president after Mobutu was taken out, Laurent Kabila was an archetype of Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba was a nationalist, and so was Laurent Kabila. And Laurent Kabila had the agenda to nationalize the mines. Yeah. So when this word got through to the Western Hemisphere, they used Kagame and Museveni, that another evil tyrant, to try and negate, Kabila. And on the other side, you had Mugabe and then Dos Santos of Angola, who were fighting with Kabila to try and nullify the threat coming from the forces of Kagame and Museveni. But what happened is that, unfortunately, Kabila was assassinated by the pro-Kagame, pro-Museveni forces via Western influence, and that nullified the Mugabe and the Santos leverage. However, the Santos and Mugabe's forces were able to repel some of the forces from Kagame and Museveni. But the bottom line is that Kabila had been killed, and that was the Achilles heel, because had Kabila not been killed, he would have put in place a nationalist program similar to what Patrice Lumumba had in mind to nationalize the mines. Therefore, DRC will not be in the position as it is today. And this is why Kagame, has been able to use the loot from DRC, because if you look at the map, you look in here, this is Katanga province here on this side. You got Rwanda there. There's a free flight from Katanga province to the capital of Rwanda, Kigali. Yeah, so he's able to fly in, right? All the mineral sources, the titanium, the cobalt, the coltan, the uranium, the platinum, the lithium iron ore that is used for the batteries for these e-scooter bikes and also for these electric cars into Rwanda, and he's used that wealth to build up his country, because Rwanda has not got the mineral wealth as countries like Ghana or Zimbabwe or DRC. So it is quite clear that Kagame has been an agent by the West, used there to as part of their geopolitical pawn in that so-called in the Great Lakes of that region called Africa, of Africa. And so we need to understand that what we see in Rwanda is not an African success story, but a failure of African leadership, because Kagame surrendered his soul to the demon and to the brotherhood. And this is why you've got the likes of Tony Blair Foundation, the Bill Gates Foundation, the Bill Clinton Foundation, and Rockefeller Foundation, all in Rwanda, because of this agent Kagame. So let's not mess around the bones. This man is the agent provocateur, or en français, agent provocateur. He is not a Pan-Africanist. He is definitely not an African revolutionary. I'll just end on that.
Thank you so much, Kwame, for jumping on board and for sharing, that insight there as well. And yeah, so it looks as though the wealth of some of the wealth of the Democratic of Congo, Republic of Congo, is finding its way from the Congo to Rwanda, and from Rwanda out there probably to the West as well. Wow, wow, wow. You see, we just need one weak president, don't we, who's prepared to open the door. And this is the extent of the exploitation. And then the problem is that when the next generation comes along and wants to close that door and wants to bring about changes, it's war. It's war. We're in a these are very serious times indeed. And the decisions that we make today is going to have a lasting impact on, how we progress or not in the future. So these discussions are really, really important. I know sometimes people think we talk too much and we need more action, but if we are not clear and if we're not looking critically of what's going on, on the continent, in the diaspora, where we went wrong in the past, and try to work out for ourselves, what the changes are that we need to be making as a people in order to avoid becoming enslaved again in the future. If we're not having these conversations and these discussions, then we're sleepwalking back into enslavement again, and another 500 years of torture and torment. We're in an unbelievable situation. It's like the Jews saying to the Germans, come and run our country for us. Are you mad? It just would never happen, So there's something seriously wrong with our mindset. Okay, Kwame, thank you so much again. Let me allow Lida to add to what you've said, and also maybe to comment on anything that he might have picked up in the chat. Rise up, brother Lida. Back to you. We're getting some squeaking coming through from your end. Not sure what that is. It could be you've got a tab open and a bit of audio coming through.
Is it still?
Okay, you've just put yourself on mute.
No, I was just checking whether it was coming from me.
It's fine now. Yeah,
Is it fine? Is it fine?
I'm not hearing it anymore. So yeah.
Okay.
Please do go ahead.
You're right. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. Wow, what a contribution from Brother Kwame there. Brother Lida, over to you. Yes.
Rumbid Zokuna Mwari, Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Let me just remind us, because sometimes we need to be reminded that we are a beautiful people. We are a blessed people. Beauty at the sight of the African has to examine itself. Morality, when it beholds the African in our element, has to check its conscience. As beautiful as we are, however, and as blessed as we are, Africa and Africans represent an enormous paradox in the world today. We are the richest people by natural endowment and natural law. We are the richest people on the planet, and yet we suffer the most extreme forms of poverty. We are the first of Mwari, God's creation. And yet we bow, we behave like children before the other races of the earth. Look at Africa today. Look at the African Union. It was built by the transformation or the revamping of the Organization of African Unity into the African Union was led by an Arab expansionist. And many of us didn't see the contradiction in that. Many of us didn't see that his motive and objective was not our motive and objective. We didn't understand that. Another paradox. It's amazing. Our African Union, the body that is supposed to represent the Union of African States, is funded predominantly by our colonizers. And we don't see the contradictions. We don't see the contradictions in that. The headquarters for the African Union was built not by African hands, not by African architectural brilliance, but by Chinese hands, Chinese architecture. And what did they do? They spiked it with surveillance devices. No wonder no one takes us seriously in the world today. Everybody thinks we're a joke because we have not caught up with the realities of history. When China was remaking itself, it didn't call anybody to help it. It closed its borders. It became insular. China even shut down its schools and its universities for nearly 2 years in order to correct the minds of the men and women who were teaching Chinese children. They had to be re-Chinaized, if you will. Africa has not done anything. Baba Chinwezu writes a book, Decolonizing the African Mind. That's what he's talking about. Decolonizing the African mind. All the contradictions, the paradoxes facing the African today are enormous, and we have to resolve them, and we will not resolve them. I'm sorry. With the present crop of leadership that we have on the African continent, it is not designed. African politics as it stands today, African systems of governance, which are not indigenous systems, are not designed nor intended for the upliftment and the empowerment and the restoration of African sovereignty. It's not designed for that. It's designed for the opposite. The people who designed that system is designed to keep them in positions of exploitation over African people and domination over African people. This is what we have to understand. And so we have to not call upon African leaders. Not call upon the African people. We have to organize at the level of the people, at the level of the grassroots, a new system, an African, indigenous African system of governance. Just get on with it. Anywhere we are as Africans in the world, get our heads together. Get our heads together and organize a system of governance. Papa Garvey says no race is free unless it has a nation of its own system of government, its own order of society. Never give up that ideal, Papa Garvey says. Never be always satisfied to live under the government of other people. Papa Garvey give us that warning. And even in Africa today, even in Africa, in the name of independence, we are living under the governance of other people. Papa Garvey also said we must never allow other nations and races to have executive control over our affairs. What are we doing in Africa? The French have executive control over our affairs in so-called Francophone Africa. The British, through Tony Blair, have executive control over our affairs in these 15 nations that have succumbed to his Institute of Global Change. His institute is driving globalization in the interest of the globalists. So let me round up because of time. Let me just say very quickly, beloved brothers and sisters. Barbados is also a paradox. I know our Prime Minister, Maya Motley, is a very impressive speaker. But we must read between the lines when she speaks. She's very clever. She's a lawyer. There is a Commission for Pan-African Affairs in Barbados that has some very good people, not only in that commission, but in other institutions in Barbados. There is a Pan-African movement in Barbados that seeks to push the government in certain directions, and they're gaining certain amount of success. But be very, very careful. When a prime minister can say that less than 2% of the population is affected by is infected by COVID-19.
Careful using that, otherwise
sorry.
Use code, yeah?
Yes.
We know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. By C19. Is that all right?
All right.
Yeah. But 100% of the population is affected. So less than 2% infected over 100% affected. And while she's sympathetic with the apprehension of some of our people in Barbados, she's still advocating that the vaccine is a good thing. We have to be very, very careful.
Yes, indeed, because we know where that's coming from.
I find that she's ambivalent on the issue of reparations as well. She has actually said that the issue of what do you call it? Climate change is a more important and urgent issue than the issue of reparations. Yeah? We have to listen to our sister, and we have to analyze her and read between the lines. We have to read the subtext, not just what she says, but what she implies or what sometimes she doesn't say. I'll leave that there. And I will also just touch on Ethiopia. And Sister Shanice, you presided over an excellent show a few weeks ago on the issue of Ethiopia. Yeah, that was one of the most important programs that you have presented, was that particular program.
All credit to the speakers, my brother. Phenomenal.
And more credit to the organizer, the presenter, the producer, the director of the program. I'm giving you the credit, my sister, primarily. Whatever I say on this program that people appreciate.
Thank you so much.
Whatever I say on this program that people may appreciate, if it was not for you, I would not be on this show. I may be somewhere else, but I wouldn't be on the show in this moment. And you're doing a brilliant work. Nobody can take that away from you, my sister. I'm giving that to you. You need to hold it. All right? There's so much more to say, but sis, I'm going to close on this, because I started off reminding us that despite the enormous paradoxes that plague Africans, that stalk us around the world, we are still a beautiful people. We are still a great people. We are still the first people on the planet. Africa is still the mother of creation and the cradle of civilization. We gave civilization to the world. There is no question about that fact. And that is what led Europeans like Herodotus, the highly respected and lauded philosopher of Europe, to say of Africans that we are the tallest. And one moment. We're the tallest, most beautiful, and long-lived of all human races. And then Homer Even before him, Homer said that we are the most just of men and the favorites of the gods. He meant men and women, but they didn't recognize women, the Greeks. So when they are saying this, there's a French man, so-called Egyptologist, Francois Champollion. He said these words: those Egyptians of old are men who taught like giants 10 feet tall. He said, we Europeans are but Lilliputians, meaning we're just tiny, little insignificant people compared to those Africans of old, because they thought like giants 10 feet tall. All we need to do in closing, beloved brothers and sisters, is to reclaim our true nature. Unite in the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Organize now, trust ourselves, trust our ability. Unite, organize now or perish, so we can rise like the mighty people that we are and accomplish whatever we will. Rumbidzo kuna mwari Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tatenda,
Tendai Mwari, to the God of Africa be the glory. Indeed. Wow, wow, wow. We all should be walking like we're 10 feet tall, planning like we're 10 feet tall. We are indeed the real giants, the sleeping giants at the moment. But, you know, some of our people are waking up, and you're there waking us up, Brother Leader Bandaka, Brother Kwame, and Sister Sheila. You know, we're well over time. I mean, Brother Kwame, do you have a final few words that you might want to leave us with as he takes his mic off? I want to thank everyone in the chat that's been contributing to the discussion this evening. On your way out, please do leave a comment underneath the video itself, so that people passing by the channel can get an insight from your comment, what the discussion has been about, so that they too may take a listen, because this is important knowledge that's being shared here. You know, this is our university. This is the platform that we're using to reach the minds and the ears of our people, because that's where the war is at. You know, when we get back into our right mind, when we get back and reclaim our culture and have that sense of pride as we had back in the day when we were accomplishing great exploits, when we get back that mindset, it's all over. It's a new day. Brother Kwame.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Shanice, once again. Thank you so much, Brother Mbandaka. It's always a pleasure listening to you. Thank you, Sister Sheila. Thank you to our viewers, people who have been watching us. I would like to encourage you to subscribe more and invite others to the channel, so that the people can be able to share in this wealth of knowledge, like what Brother Leader Mbandaka is doing. Try and like the channel and share it with others. I've listened very well to Leader Mbandaka. Yes, it is indeed true that we really don't need to call onto these leaders, but I think we need to send a very clear message to them that this continent belongs to us, and they need to get their acts together. If they don't get their act together, we will remove them by any means necessary. Like the ancestor Malcolm X said, that by any means necessary. So the Mwalimu Julius Nyerere said that the worst sin we can commit is the sin of despair. So we must not despair. If we look at our ancestors, the challenges they had, enormous challenges, but they were able to come out. You know, slavery, there was nothing, they didn't have any resources. Today we have so much resources, so we must not despair. We are under attack from all directions, but we must also understand that we have so much resources at our disposal to be able to fight this, this war and win it, because our enemy may appear as if he's strong, but at the same time, our enemy is very, very much weakened. They are very weakened. That is why you see that the European Union is breaking up. That is why you see that America is having all these problems, running out of Afghanistan, going up and down. These are all problems. These are signs that these people have been weakened. So We don't need to despair. We just need to organize ourselves. We need to come together. We need to identify ourselves, like how Dr. Umar Johnson said. We need to be Africans. We don't need to be African Americans and, you know, this and that. As long as you're black, you are an African. We are Africans all over the continent. We need to stop identifying ourselves as Ugandans and Ghanaians and Nigerians. And, you know, these are things which have been reinforced by the colonialists to keep us divided. So we need to understand that we are Africans first. And then in that way, we will be able to protect our resources all over the continent. The one in South Africa will be concerned about the resources in Libya. The one in Kenya will be concerned about the resources in Nigeria. The one in, you know, in Niger will be concerned about the resources in the Congo, because we have identified ourselves as Africans. So I would call everyone, like the youth especially, we need to identify ourselves as Africans and call ourselves as Africans. And to that, we will be able to rebuke all the attackers, all the enemies who are attacking us all over the continent. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you very, very much as well, Brother Kwame Gonza. As always, you know, a pleasure and an honor to have you on the panel. We learned so much from you as well. Sister Sheila, would you like to round off with a short story, my sis?
Yes, the short story will be this. The story that we're not really divided. I will just sum up. I won't say the story. I just say we're not divided, we're one. And I say this based on a comment I've just read from the comment section, where someone said the next time we're discussing any of these things, we need to get people from the country itself to be there in the panel. And this is part of the problem. We have been so used to not be interested in what is happening in the other African countries for the sole reason we are told it's nothing to do with us. We forget that these boundaries are put there by the oppressor. These boundaries were not there. Africa was one. We were one people. Therefore, as Brother Kwame was saying, if anything is happening in Rwanda, as long as you are African, you must take note of it and you must speak about it. If anything is happening in Guinea-Bissau, or if anything is happening in Namibia, it does not matter whether you live there or not. As long as you're African, this is your business. Because what we have seen so far, they replicate this thing. As Brother Leader was telling us, 15 countries have caved in and taken this Tony Blair with his globalist agenda. This is purely because we are looking at each of them as an individual country. But if we were looking at it as a whole and making decisions as a whole and getting interested in what is happening in each and every of these jurisdictions, these things will not happen. So we have to make it part of our intent that whatever it is we are doing, we should not only focus on people living in a particular area to discuss them. That is part of the problem. That is why an area would have a problem and another area would be used to come and inflict more problems. Like you've heard that Rwanda is used to exploit Congo. And you've heard that Kenya is used to exploit Somalia or Sudan. So this happens because we are very loyal to these geographical boundaries that have been put there during this scramble and partition of Africa. These boundaries don't serve us, they serve the oppressor. And for that reason, when we have shows like this, whereby we are having people to come and discuss about anything in Africa, and they can discuss, let them come. Otherwise, if we limit ourselves to only bringing people that come from that country, we may never have a discussion, or we may never discuss some countries purely because we cannot get people from that country to speak. So for that reason, if anything is to do with Africa, we should speak. And I give so much thanks for shows like this. I give thanks to you, Sister Shanice. I give thanks to you, Brother Leader Mandaka and Brother Kwame, and all other panelists that come to these shows to trigger these conversations. And of course, to the viewers who tune in every single Wednesday to this show, I give thanks as well. It is through this conversation that we liberate ourselves. So see you next strong. I give thanks. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. I want to thank you, the panel. I want to thank our audience. Thank you so much for the wonderful comments in the chat. Thank you so much. Please also post those comments at the bottom of the video as well before you leave YouTube altogether. Sister Sheila, thank you so, so much. Brother Kwame Gonza in his absence, thank you so, so much. Brother Lida Bandaka, thank you so, so much. It's been a wonderful, very insightful conversation. I've learned so much today. And we all, please need to share the contents of this video, even if it's not the video, but from the discussion, take the discussions that we're having here onto your platforms, into your arenas, at the dining table, as you eat with the family. We all need to be singing from the same hymn book, so to speak. So to everyone that's been watching, we thank you so, so much. And all being well, we will be back next Wednesday, same time, for another live Sister Shanice show. Keep rising, family. Stay strong and stay powerful. One love. We're leaving you to enjoy the rest of the night, the evening, or the day, and have a great strong ahead as well. One love, family.